Are you still concerned about what happened on January 6th? Man, I am. It doesn't seem to be getting the sort of attention, at least in the popular press, that I think is warranted. This was an attempt by Trump and his brown shirts to literally overthrow the government of the United States. I don't think there's any question about using the term attempted coup. That's exactly what it was. Well, Biden is considering releasing information about the orange vomit and his involvement in the January 6th attack. And if that information is released, it's going to set off some real ripples of, legal, political showdown? Would that be a good way to put it? It's been the tradition that when a newly elected president assumes office, that president doesn't discuss or get into what his predecessor did or didn't do. Now, it's not written down anyplace, but that's just the tradition. A new president focuses on his own agenda and does not get involved in the crimes that may have been committed by his predecessor. That's the way it's always been. But the Biden White House, according to the anonymous sources who speak on condition of anonymity because they haven't been authorized, yada, 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 yada. But according to these sources, the Biden White House is now leaning toward releasing information to Congress, to these investigative committees, about what Donald Trump and his aides were doing during that January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. And this is in spite of the orange vomit's objections. But if Biden decides to do this, there's going to be all sorts of political and legal ramifications. I love that word. I'm going to get me some ramifications. Right. Anyway, the Washington Post is reporting that Trump has said that he will cite executive privilege to block information requests from from the select committee that's investigating the crimes that were committed that day and who committed them, who organized them, who facilitated them, who financed them, the degree to which the orange vomit was involved, and these right-wing Christian fascist members of the U.S. government who were involved, not just members of Congress, but scum who worked in the Biden cabinet. I mean, just on and on and on. Now, what the orange vomit is hoping is that he's banking on a legal theory that has successfully allowed presidents and their aides to either avoid or delay any kind of congressional scrutiny for decades, including during the Trump administration. I mean, that's the reason it takes so goddamn long to know all the intricacies of the crimes committed by Richard Nixon, or the crimes committed during the Reagan years, about which we still don't have a full report, about the crimes committed by George W. Bush. Why has there not been any investigation into the war crimes that George W. Bush committed? I mean, it just goes on and on. The crimes committed by his old man, George Herbert Walker Bush, where it concerns Central America. It's a custom in this country, you see, that when a new president takes office, he doesn't, get into what his predecessor did. Okay. However, apparently Biden is considering whether or not to err on the side of disclosure because of the seriousness of what happened on January 6th. Now, according to the Washington Post, in response to questions about White House deliberations over what information to release, Biden spokesman Michael Gwynn said the president views the attack on the Capitol as, quote, a dark stain on our country's history, and is, quote, deeply committed to ensuring something like that can never happen again. And he supports Biden supports a thorough investigation, end quote. That's according to an authorized spokesman for Joe Biden. And I think what is indicated in that statement is that Biden is going to do this. Now, the question comes up as to whether or not the orange vomit can once again use something to which he's not entitled, executive privilege, to stall or divert or hide or otherwise pollute the January 6th investigation. Trump is a thug, a bastard, and a criminal. And he understands that for a brief period in his life, he was totally protected. He could commit any crime he wanted to. And he was protected because he was president of the United States. And the son of a bitch took full advantage of that. The extent to which he did take advantage, Biden seems to indicate that he's willing to share with the American public. Let it hang out. Why not? Now, the Post also reports that members of the committee investigating what happened on January 6th, argue, and in my opinion, rightfully so, that Trump no longer enjoys the protection of executive privilege. I mean, I don't understand why he had it to begin with. That is something that has been a traditional addition to the perks of being president of the United States. There's no such thing as executive privilege written down someplace in the Constitution. It doesn't exist. Of course, I assume that the framers, as hypocritical as they were about certain issues, assumed that the idea of what we call executive privilege was irrelevant to the formation of this new country. I'm sure the framers thought, well, look, we're not going to have crooks and con artists be president of the United States. We may have slavers be president of the United States. We may have rapists be president of the United States, where it concerns white men attacking black enslaved women, but we won't have people who will lie and hide things. Boy, how wrong they were. So, this argument that Trump no longer enjoys executive privilege should be, I mean, to me, it shouldn't even be a discussion. But that's encouraging the Biden White House to push aside these so-called institutional concerns about sharing information with Congress. Remember, these are competing branches of government. They were designed that way. And in sharing that information with Congress, the executive branch would be aiding in an investigation focused on what Democrats and one or two Republicans have called an assault on democracy. You see, this is where I would say that the old rules or the old traditions no longer apply. We're not talking here about some cheesy little crime or violation of principle committed by Donald Trump. In fact, the crimes committed by various Republican presidents over the past 45 years have been horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. Oh, all right, over the past 60 years. Just absolutely horrifying. When you consider the Christmas bombing of North Vietnam, who ordered that? A Democrat, wasn't it? Lyndon Johnson. When you consider the incursions of the U.S. military in our poisonous attacks in Southeast Asia, engineered and ordered by Richard Nixon. When you consider the crimes committed against people in Central America by Ronald Reagan, his administration, when you can, I'm just right down the list. Has there been a president who has not committed what you and I would look at and say, you know, that's really shitty, horrible, bad, murderous behavior? Has there been one? Even the sainted Barack Obama ordering drone strikes against suspected targets and wiping out entire families. And with very few exceptions, these crimes committed by past presidents have been, as the article in the Washington Post says, they have been glossed over or ignored by incoming presidents taking a look back at what the previous president has done. Look what Gerald Ford did, a blanket pardon of Richard Nixon. Before an investigation could be completed, we knew about Watergate. We knew about all those things that came under the heading of Watergate. The secret bombing of Cambodia, for example. And we'll never know how many people died because Richard Nixon was a megalomaniacal alcoholic who was a failed Quaker. I guess his mommy was a Quaker, and Dick Nixon just couldn't get there. And then you have George Herbert Walker Bush, an arrogant son of a bitch of the Bush dynasty. Then you have his cheap shit son, who was a coward, who hid in Alabama when it was his term to go kill people in Southeast Asia, for which I don't really fault him for hiding to get away from it. I mean, the list just goes on and on until we get to this monstrous son of a bitch, Donald Trump. Unlike any president that this country has ever had, or even would have considered having. But we had him, didn't we? Anyway, Jamie Raskin, representative, Democrat of Maryland, a committee member who teaches constitutional law, and he was one of the prosecutors during the second impeachment of this orange vomit. It was Jamie Raskin who made such an incredibly coherent and spot on prosecution and presentation to all members of the House to impeach this son of a bitch, and then to go ahead and convict him in the Senate, which was never going to happen because the Christian fascists love criminality. They love deceit. They love lies. But Raskin said, quote, "It's not really relevant because there's no president involved. There's no such thing as a former president's executive privilege." And Raskin, of course, teaches constitutional law. So he's just making the point, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. What Trump was doing while the attack was occurring. Now, I know we've heard the report, so we went home and watched it on 4 or 5 different massive television screens, a sick bastard, and who he was speaking with while the attack was going on. And you know there are several of these scum-sucking Christian fascists who have already claimed that as a badge of honor. Oh, yeah, I talked to him several times. Yes, of course. But the big unanswered questions concerning the assault on the Capitol remain unasked, much less unanswered. So it appears, and I hope this happens, that Biden is going to break with this ridiculous tradition of covering up, is what it amounts to, covering up the crimes. I mean, an incoming president is going to know as soon as he's sworn in and the briefings begin about the various cabinet cabinet positions and what's involved in each one, and what the previous cabinet officer did, or what the previous department did, what the previous president did. All of that shit becomes almost instant knowledge to a new president, especially some of the more egregious examples of criminality. So I don't think there's anything Biden doesn't know at this point as to what Trump, the criminal son of a bitch Trump, was doing on January 6th. So the court system was set up with all these little nooks and crannies to try to protect the rights of people charged with a crime, white people charged with a crime. And Trump is using that, even though he's guilty as a pile of dog shit attracts flies. He is absolutely guilty of everything, plus God knows what else that we haven't even and will probably never know about. I mean, the man is a walking mobster. He's a pile of crime breaking, law breaking, and just criminal behavior, criminal activity. It just reeks and drips from him and his whole filthy family. what Biden is going to do. I hope he releases everything that he has. I hope he just gives it all. Now, it won't come to you and me. It won't go to the public. But I would like to see all of it. Just all of it. Release it all. Throw it all at the committee. Let them sort it out. Let them release those parts that they feel the American people should know about. Think that'll happen? Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.